definitely, I agree. Moving on slightly, impact your world, leaving a legacy that changes lives and the world. Is your legacy determined by the number you affect or the effect on the number?
Sorry, just say that again. I was going to say both. I was going to say, aren't they the same?
Is your legacy determined by the number you affect or the effect on the number?
I think society would view it as the number you affect, but I think depending on what effect you've had on the people who maybe it matters to, they might argue it's the effect you've had on them. You could have an amazing effect on one single person where you completely turn their life around, which maybe it hasn't got the mainstream. No, just generally society has not been made aware of that effect you've had on that one person. But to that person, you've been the most impactful thing in their life ever. So how did I start it off? As I said,
you're on the right track.
Yeah, I think it's. I can't remember I started the sentence, but exactly the point. The example I just gave matches back to how I started the sentence, and that's the point I was making.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of feed off what you were saying is why I put the question out there, because I think it is the effect on the number rather than how many, because you can be a parent or you can be a coach, and if you've saved, as the saying goes, if I've just saved one life, then I'm happy with that kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying? So if you can affect, it's almost like having a butterfly effect. So if I teach a bunch of kids, I've got 5 kids that I'm mentoring, and I give them the energy that helps them not to necessarily become mentors, but they affect another 5 people. And that compounds. Those 5 people that they've helped go help another 5 people. I'm almost at 25 just from those 5 people that I've now mentored and helped. That compounds to another 25. Do you know what I mean? And that continues. So you may not directly have the effect on the masses, but invertedly, you actually are having an effect on the masses just from those 5 people, because your legacy compounds over the amount of people that those people touch and the amount of time that it goes, reverberates through history and through time. And yeah, that's my thought on it.
Easy comparison, the easy win straight away is with maybe the garage or grime scene, and how the fact that people can actually make a solid living, buy a house, buy mum's houses. Whereas when we were going 15, 20 years ago to our under and over 18s, they were getting £150 for the hour spitting, and it was a side hobby, a weekend thing once they had their Monday to Friday. But what they've done, the effort they've put in, has now compounded to the fact where they've now got a sustainable economy within that scene.
Yeah, facts. Go on, B, I know you're going to jump in there. So.
Oh, no. If I'm honest, I felt there's nothing I can really add to what both of you said, if I'm honest. Yeah, I mean, I was unsure I was unsure at the time, but I would agree in that the latter is the effect of the effect on that one person in particular, or maybe a few people, that matters more than affecting a wide group of people, but maybe having very little effect.
Yeah, well put. So he talks about having a mentor and how important they can be. How easy is it to find a suitable mentor?
Similar to the way the universe works. If you're putting the feelers out there and you're putting that feeling out there, that's what you want. I think it will get drawn to you, or you'll get drawn to it, or you'll meet in the middle, essentially. Honestly, like, there's a lot of things that have happened where I've just, even in the working world, I've just put feelers out and put that feeling out there. This is what I want to do. And the way the world and the universe works, you kind of, you kind of come together, or you'll eventually get there. I honestly think it's just about putting, if that's what you want, speak it into existence, put the feelers out, do your little, you might have left an imprint on a website, and then next minute you get an advertisement another day on another website because you've left the imprint. It's similar in the way of the world. Like you're speaking to friends about something that you want to do, and all of a sudden that somehow gets to someone, and you kind of meet. I just feel like if French, I know that I don't know if you still do, or if you want to talk about it, but I know you've had a mentor in the past. I don't know if you still do, but how you could probably talk about your experience and how you managed to get that mentor.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to summarize what you were saying in terms of putting up feelers and constantly putting it out there, I think there was a point where I was saying I need a mentor in this business. Like I need someone that I can go and ask questions. And it just so happened someone that we work with that was basically subcontracting us jobs. I asked him, I said out flat, look, I'd like you to be my mentor. And he said, yeah, essentially. It's not like the typical mentorship where we talk every day, but he is a point of contact where I can get information on the industry, or if I feel there's a move that I want to make or consider, he's always there to answer the phone and talk it through with me, or give me his best advice or his experience. So yeah, I think, I kind of agree with what you're saying, but maybe because I'm also aware of the fact that the kind of mentor I was looking for, I haven't yet found, but at the same time, maybe it's not the kind of mentor I actually need. So sometimes you don't always get what you want, you get what you need. So in that sense, I agree with what you're saying.
Am I dreaming or imagining this? Did we have this conversation with Swift as well did we have this conversation?
Yeah, I asked if did he have mentors.
Yeah.
Did you want to answer, P?
Yeah, no. Like I agreed and disagreed with Mason in some essence. Like I do believe, obviously, once you put things out into the universe, things will transpire. I don't disagree with that in any way, shape, or form. But what I would say is, I think to find someone who we all don't necessarily want the same thing in life. I think a lot of people have gone down different paths. So to find that one person specifically who has done exactly what you've done or something very, very similar, sometimes can be, I think, a bit more difficult to find. Yeah, can be a little bit more difficult to find. And I think there's been very, very small times and periods to which I've been looking for maybe someone to maybe help or assist. And I'm not entirely sure whether it's as easy as it sounds. But what I would say is that I think there are many people, and I don't want to necessarily lean on the subject of books, but I think there are a number of people I think who have obviously gone down your path before, very similar to like role models who you can look at and take inspiration from. You know, I mean, I'm looking at there's a bit in a piece in the book in chapter 5 as to Nelson Mandela, and the reason why I kind of actually I would hold him in high regard, and I don't want to say an idol, I'm not too sure that's the word I'm looking for, but I remember being away, and with some of the things that I was thinking about, some of the things that I was going through, I used Mandela as a comparison. I used to think to myself, if I'm going through problems right now, and I remember I was 27 at the time, I thought Nelson Mandela did 27 years in jail. So like the problems I'm going through now, Nelson Mandela went through those problems and my lifetime. So like, not that I'm equal to Nelson Mandela, but if he was able to get through those problems, then surely I can do so. I can do so also, or I can find my way.
Do you know why this has just sprung to mind actually, Pete? But the whole like universe thing, yeah. It's just slightly away from mentoring, but like the other day you were speaking about that you wanted to get your hair done, and obviously that was a thought that you had in your brain.
Yeah.
I don't know who. I'm not sure who to go to. This is what I'm thinking for you now. I'm not sure who to go to. Let me put it out in the universe. Let me send a couple of texts out. Oh, does anyone know of someone? Blah blah blah. And I knew of someone who knew of someone, and not straight away, but eventually those dots connected to where you had that conversation with that person, to whether or not you want to get your hair done and how to do it and all that. It's just little things like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Where you connect up the dots.
Oh, no, I totally agree. No, I don't disagree in English before. I think that's a very good example. I just, with this dynamic specifically, I just think it's a little bit. I think it can be a little bit more difficult. Yeah, I just.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
sorry. Can I use you as an example, friend? So, like, there's no sense of underwhelmed in any way, shape, or form because your mentor's helping you, but I get the sense that you're looking for a different type of mentor, which you haven't quite found yet. Whereas the mentor you have at this moment in time, he works for what you're doing in your industry, but maybe for, and I'm just speaking, for how you want to develop as a person or in other aspects of business, you haven't quite found that person, or you would like to find that person, or you haven't found that person.
I mean, I said that still. I did say that. I mean, as I said, I think sometimes maybe this isn't the stage for me to get the mentor that I want, but maybe he's the mentor that I need to progress where I need to get to. Do you know what I'm saying? So both points are valid, to be honest. Like, you both made great points, and I agree with both. There's not any way to really split that in that essence. But he speaks on being a mentor, and what he says, which is on page 89, is, so I pull to the school in my Beamer, walk in the class with my jewellery on, and show them up close how I can floss and look like the other favourite rappers or athletes. But I happen to run my own business, and I'm my own boss. Many of the kids are shocked to find out that I can be a successful business owner and still dress like the guys in the street that they idolise. I mean, we've had that conversation already, so I don't want to go over it, but it reverts back to the questions in regards to what we can do to influence the next generation by being an example. He also goes on to say, never forget that our true greatness lies within leaving an impact that will make a life greater for the awesome generations to follow. This is how we truly carry out our legacy, which also again reverts back to the question asked about the effect on the number, or the effect of that number on that number. We're going to move on to chapter 6, but before we do, is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention?
Not specifically, no. I think there are a number of points in the book, but I think that'll be quite scattered, so I'd avoid that.
Cool. So chapter 6, he speaks on education. What amazed me about reading this book was that I could visualize everything going down just like it was a movie. It was even better in a way, because everything that happened, and just to give context, he's referring to a Donald Goines book. And if you don't know who Donald Goines is, he's a Black author that speaks of, I guess, Black experiences in the USA. He speaks a lot of the criminal lifestyle, not necessarily glamorizing it, but just giving it perspective of reading it rather than just watching and read and listening to music. So he's an author. He's a well-known author, Donald Goines. Look him up if you don't know who he is. He wrote some great books. But actually, I think even in this book, he might be talking about Iceberg Slim, one of the two. But either way, Pimp is a great book by Iceberg Slim. I also recommend it as well. So moving on. What amazed me about reading this book was that I could visualize everything going down just like it was a movie. It was even better in a way, because everything that happens in the book could be brought to life through my own perspective and imagination. I didn't know books could pull out those kinds of gangster plots and twists to draw in somebody like me. So yeah, just to go back, he is talking about Donald Goines and he's reading the books when he's in jail. So the question being, what were the first books that you read that got you into reading, and what suggestions would you give to the YGs to get into reading?
I'm not too sure if it was the first book I read, but it was, I was going to say Think and Grow Rich, but it was one of those, the Art of War might have been, like, that wasn't the first, but it was not far off. But Think and Grow Rich, and there might be one or two before, like in that kind of realm.
What about you, Mace? So what would you, before you answer, Mace, what would you suggest to some of the young gunners out there?
In relation to what? In relation to picking up a book?
Yeah, just like to get into reading.
I've there's a couple of things. First thing, it depends. If they say like if they're young gunners, proper young drillers, like on the road drillers, yeah? And I would suggest giving them or them reading a book about someone who's lived a similar life or similar lifestyle has now gone into adulthood and the consequences or effects or how they've changed or even what they're doing now, just so they can get a perspective of how their life might possibly going forward from the point that they're at.
What books, what was some of the first books that you read that got you into reading?
I can't even recall. There was that book and I can't remember. It was a Jamaican book when I must have been about 9 and I can't remember the name of it. I'd have to actually ask my mother, but I can't remember the name of it that I would read over and over and over again that I can't remember, I can't recall. More recently, I think I mentioned before, I thought Trevor Noah's book was exceptional. His life story, I thought that was pretty exceptional, and I'd advise people to read that, just because I just thought it was an exceptional book about, I don't know, it's about his life, but there was many aspects I took out of it that I really liked.
What about you, P? Like, what suggestions would you give to any of the YGs there?
I think Mason was like pretty much spot on. I think more often than not, I think, you know, to begin with, my first thought was to read something that had a lot of imagination. But if you're, still, I would still actually advise someone to read something that had a bit of imagination. So not necessarily a book that was non-fiction. I'm sorry, a book that was non-fiction. But at the same time, I think these were some of the first books that I read as well, that were non-fiction and had a lot of structure to it by way of self-improvement. But at the same time, Mason's suggestion as to reading something that someone wrote that shared similarities with their life, and because they've lived out their story and lived out their life, it will resonate with them a lot more, and then they'll probably go out and look to seek some of these answers in other books.
With the YG question, it depends. If they're YGs who want a change and they want to go in a certain direction, then I wouldn't advise them to read. I think already they're ready for that change. They don't need to read a book on someone who's lived the same lifestyle, and this has been the consequences of that lifestyle and how it's affected them, positive or negative, going forward. If they're ready for that change and actually need to read a book to give them inspirational influence, then you're going to recommend them something like a Shoe Dog or something like that, something that's entrepreneurial for them to kind of look up to inspire, that kind of book. So it just depends on where they are at that current moment within their life and mindset.
Or like another book, I mean, it's the book that got a lot of people going, at least thinking, and a lot of us were quite young at that point in reading, like The Alchemist. I mean, like, it's the one book like that a lot of people will say over and over again that got people thinking to begin with, and it just expands your mind outside of your immediate environment, and takes your mind a little bit further than, I don't want to say your area, but again, I'll use the word again, your environment. And it encourages thinking. And then from there, I can only hope, what books are for, that encourages you to seek more knowledge.
Cool. You mentioned that you also wrote a book, From Crumbs to Bricks. And this, let me ask that last question as well. Do you know what? When you said The Alchemist, P, what book sprang to me, and I guess, as you said, Mace, as well, depends on what stage they are and where they are mentally, in terms of whether they're in the transitional stage or they're they're still knee deep in this thing, and just like any book will do, almost sort of vibe. But one book I think would resonate on either side of that fence, I think, would be The Richest Man in Babylon. Because it talks about money, it talks about money literacy. And at the end of the day, whether you're on the roads or off the roads and doing the legit thing, you're going to need to learn how to manage your money. And I think The Richest Man in Babylon is a great book I personally find as a way to be financially literate. So that's probably my suggestion to a YG to read, whether they're, as I said, whether they're active or not. One of the first books that I read, I think I already mentioned it, was Malcolm X. That was an influential book for me. But as I said before, I was reading comics and magazines, so that was like my first reading. Then my parents would get us books here and there to read as well. Then plus going out to the library every weekend. So I was probably heavily into reading from earlier. So I couldn't even tell you what the first book that I read and whatnot. But I just remember I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but I used to just like reading everything. Like when we was like out with my mum and she's getting her hair done, we're at the hairdressers, and you just got to be sitting there while she got that big thing over her head. I'll just read the magazines that was there, or when we go to the GP surgery, I'll read all the leaflets and the flyers, just to be doing something, just to not be bored, just to read. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's where my I guess passion for reading come from, just from early. But he mentions he wrote another book called From Crumbs to Bricks, and he talks about the power of reading, and he makes a statement on page 97 where he says, reading exercises your brain muscles. They are free weights for the mind. And also goes on to mention on page 101 the power of a degree. Now we've all been to university fully booked, so do degrees still have a place in this day and age of society presently?
Good question. Do you want to go first, P, or me?
I think it's a simple answer, really. I think, I think they do have a place in society, but I think now there's a bit more, let's say, flexibility in relation to your experience and some of the other skill sets that you can offer. So there's nothing wrong with a degree, but I mean, as later on in this chapter, it goes on to talking about Google, YouTube, university, again, things of that nature as well. And even like the 20 hours of study, which can provide you with knowledge into a new subject.
Nice.
Knowing what I know now and what I didn't know then, I think in the UK, it's kind of typical university age is between 18 and 21 or 19 and 22, whatever it is, yeah? Knowing what I know now at this age, I think a degree is always, right, first and foremost, a degree shows a good way to kind of, it's a good way to show that you could be committed to something for a certain amount of time, stick with it, get through it, and produce results at the end of it. So that regardless, that's always a good way. It shows that, you know, you're in it, you can be into something for the long run. Even when times get hard, you still stay solid and strong. What I would say is, on your choice of what you want to do in life, it might not always be relevant. The only problem is, in some kind of schools of society, it's almost seen as an academic level of where you're at academically, which isn't always the case. It's the same with schools, with some amazing people, even Christopher Freeman, who struggle at school because of the way the education system is set up. It's not designed how they learn and how they work and how they operate. And a lot of times, schooling prepares you for a job. It doesn't prepare you for leadership or to become a business owner. A lot of it is prepared for even the structure of schooling with a regimen of, 9 till 3 and 1 break or whatever. And then as you get older into college, it can be from 9 till 5. But even the regiment's preparing you for like the world of everyday work. So going back to the degree, yes, it's good because it shows that you can stick to something. But what I would say is, in terms of going to attain a degree, if it's relevant within what you want to do within your field, if it's 100% relevant, you need to have that, then yes. If it's not, and as Poca pointed out, you can get your kind of mastery of a particular topic or subject area and then use that skill either even via, or even going out and doing an apprenticeship or getting experience elsewhere and then use that skill to develop yourself, whether you want to have your own business or just go further afield within your field of work. A degree is not relevant, in my opinion.
Great points. Great points. I believe that, it's hard to, it's hard to go over everything that you just said, both of you, because I agree basically. I think there is a place for degrees. Even though I haven't ended up using it particularly, I could still go back on it if ever I need to. But in regards to even reverting back to what you're saying in terms of like Chris, the author, and how he wasn't necessarily able to learn academically how he would like to learn, and reverting back to, again, what you were saying about it just makes you, it sets you up to work in a job. And I definitely felt that, like, even with the degree that I done, essentially, now that I think about it, even as I was doing it, because when I was obviously in uni, I was still on the roads. I was still doing what I was doing. So I already had that business sense and business acumen. So even, I remember one particular lecture, and our lecturer was talking about where we can go on to and like get jobs in football clubs or get jobs here. And I was like, fuck that, excuse my language, forget all that. I'm just going to set up my own business. I'm just going to set up my own thing and set up my own clinic. That was initially what my thought process is. And I remember he was talking about being able to talk to clients and stuff. I was like, I do that every day, B. That's nothing. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, but we never had a module on how to set up our own business or set up, like, be your own boss. Because essentially, when you learn to do sports therapy, it's you can literally step out of uni and set up your own business because you're qualified therapist, which I know one of my friends has done and went on to do. But you don't get shown that. You get shown go into an establishment that's already made and become a worker, essentially. And we get taught how to be workers throughout the whole educational system. So on that note, I don't think it's particularly great, but as you pointed out, Mace, it shows commitment. And there was a lot of other skills that I did actually learn besides doing the actual sports therapy course. So one of the things that I definitely took from it and I really enjoyed, but I didn't realize till after, was research methods, which we learned in the first year. And if you don't know what research methods is, it's basically learning how to research. And if that means researching the researcher itself. So, for example, you may read something in the news or the newspaper. Instead of just taking that as gospel, you research the article. Who wrote that article? Why did they write that article? What's their position? Did they get paid by the person that they're trying to deframe or not deframe? Do you know what I mean? So you peel back a few layers, and that's research methods. That taught me a lot in just how to go about learning about new whatever it is, new modalities, or in research to a book or whatever that you may be writing about, not just take everything as face value, being able to look at the sides and look at the different angles that the particular person or industry may be trying to promote. So again, that reverts to, I think we've spoken about it on another issue and another book, but you get pharmaceutical companies that will pay for a study to be done and make sure that the results are skewed, that their product is looked at in a good light. Now, you wouldn't know that unless you've done research methods where you would look at who's paid for that study and what they will be looking to gain from the particular results. So you can say, I'm not going to believe that study is not going to be viable because it's been paid for by that industry, which we've seen in What Not to Eat. Was it not What to Eat? How Not to Die. Okay. So the doctor spoke about a lot of like the studies when it came to beef and milk, like the milk industry. A lot of the milk companies would make studies to make it look like milk is good for you, that it's healthy, it's good for your calcium and all that. But that's not actually the case. But if you researched it a bit more, you'd find out that it was the milk companies that were backing the studies for the results to be put out as they are. But I digress. Mm-hmm. Moving on to the secret treasures of life. The fable about the ruler of the world. Over time, this fable has been twisted and condensed to, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. And that's on page 110. How does that make you feel?
Well, the first thing that came to mind was, well, we weren't even bloody allowed to read. So, I mean, of course, if you hit something in a book, room to find it. I don't know. There's a part of me that couldn't. I don't even care. I don't even care at this point. But looking back then, yeah, of course it was disrespectful. But now, I don't feel no way about it now. Of course, it's very disrespectful, but times have changed.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Mace?
Yeah, I feel the same too, man. Like, when I hear that statement now, I just feel completely disrespected. But yeah, I just feel disrespected. We're not illiterate fools. You know what I mean? We're not illiterate fools. It's just completely disrespectful. But at the, going back in time, P and French, you've alluded to it earlier about the fact that you had to dumb yourself down. You couldn't even be seen to be able to understand or be able to read scripture or English or whatever language it was back in the day. And like, we're in a different era now where actually, even though you have to question your source of information, as you rightly pointed out, French research methods, you can now go on Google, like a lot, like if there's something you want to find out, you can now go onto your web browser, search, research, counter search, and yeah, you should still read your books. Still a lot of information in books, but there's other forms and methods of now gathering information as well.
You better research those jokers as well on Google too. But I mean, but like, yeah, Google and YouTube are very good sources of information.
Is he dropped?
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, he has.
Okay. I was wondering why he didn't laugh. I thought that was funny. A number of notes, but I mean, I think we've covered quite a bit. So obviously, he speaks about the 20 hours. Yeah, you mentioned it before. Obviously, how he said, obviously, I always thought reading was for nerds and cornballs, as he said. But obviously, once he discovered reading was good, he said, obviously, you can travel any place in the world by reading a book.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is, no, we've gone through the 20, the power of the degree and a few other things as well. Yeah, I'm done.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm done, yeah.
Cool. Chapter 7, million dollar transactions. So how Dope Boy's skills translate to a successful entrepreneur. Dope boys often understand that the inner and outer energy it takes to exude that intangible it factor, and that's on page 123. Can you still possess the it factor without the most luxurious material possessions?
100%, man. 110%, man. Like, there's like people that I'll stop, not stop what I'm doing, but if they speak, I'm listening, or if they speak, I'm listening. I'm trying to think. Who have I said this about before? Even Dame Dash. I just love getting his perspective and opinions. And to be completely honest, I haven't researched if he's doing really, really well in terms of business, if he's not doing bad. But when he speaks, I listen, because actually he gives me that motivation or enthusiasm or inspiration to kind of up your game, essentially. Like, he gives you that drive. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore, really. No, I think I don't want to say you got it or you ain't got it, but I mean, you don't need to flaunt in order to demonstrate that you have an it factor. I mean, I don't want to say it's common knowledge, but we all know. I mean, you find diamonds in a rough, and that's not necessarily. I'm not necessarily saying that in relation to your environment, but diamonds, those with an it factor, don't necessarily just jump up and then they're flossing. You know what I mean? They start off rough and then they gradually become polished stones.
Mm.
With you, one that.
I think the other thing as well is, I think the age you're at now, when you see, I know with me anyway. Sometimes I can see right through. Like some people, they flaunt it and they've got it like visually, but you know they've got it behind all that as well. Some people, I swear, I can just see right through them. I can see they're wearing it. They're like, take me seriously with what I'm wearing, and I can see right through it sometimes. Honest to God, I can see right through it.
Facts. That's most of the time though.
Hmm.
That's most of the time. Everyone like man will wear all their jewels, all their drip, and that's all they bring to the table. It's just what you can see. They have got nothing up there.
Mm.
Sorry to like change the subject ever so slightly, but I mean we discussed it with George and we've discussed it here today. Like, how do you convince a child? I want to say a child, but I mean a teenager who's making as much as George was to put it all down or to stop. I mean, we discussed obviously.
That's the point of going back to personal responsibility. Like you can drop all the gems to someone all you like, but sometimes you just gotta feel.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. It's like, all right, cool. It's like, let's take it back to one of our first fully booked weeks. Or is it? No, it wasn't even our first fully booked weeks. But going back to when we was rapping with being Alfie, and he was saying at a time when he was making a lot of bread, he was arrogant with it. No one could chat to him, even if it had good intention, even if they were saying the right thing. When you're in that zone, when you're getting bread like that, it doesn't matter who's talking to you. You're not going to hear it until you feel it. So in that situation, in that scenario, you just got to hold, you're either going to, unfortunately, hold a bird, or even worse, end up getting clapped or licked down. It's just, as Mace pointed out, it's just the way of life sometimes, bro. It is what it is. Like, some things can't be, you can teach something, you can reiterate something, but some things, you have to feel it. Like, you have to physically be in that position. You've got to be in that tight spot before you realize, all right, cool, this ain't it.
You know what? The more we speak and we have this conversation, I've been thinking about this phrase over the past couple of days, and maybe it's just come in and out of conversation, because I think we had this conversation maybe with George as well, as to smart people learn from their smart people learn from their mistakes, and wise people learn from the mistakes of others. I don't know. Is that just I don't know, just a bunch of nice words put together? No, I mean, be serious, because like when you're, as you mentioned, being Alfie, like, we got to be honest. When you're young, and I want to use that phrase, like, in the context of being young. Like, when you don't know no different, in that when the money's coming in, you believe it's never going to end. Sorry, go on, French.
No, cool. I forgot what I was going to say now.
So there's a couple of things. So with French touched on great reverting back to also when we've done crushing it with being Alfie, actually, because he hit both himself and Swift made the same point. I hadn't even put the dots together about arrogance when they had the money. No one could tell them anything. Guess what? You're trying to tell me that everything's going swimmingly well. Unfortunately, with Swift, he had to get. If he had got 2.5 years, he would have come out and done the same thing. He knows that. He had to get that big number, and then the realization hit him, and then it would have hit him even more when he realized at 25, 26, he's missed out on the majority of his 20s, but he ain't going to see. 20s are your best year. Like, 20s are, you can do everything at your 20s. So you pretty much are your best years. He's missed out on the most of them. Do you get what I'm saying? The other thing I'll say is that the reference you made, P, about wise people learn from the mistakes of others. So whether or not, and I'm going to go back because I'm trying to personalize it, going back to the point I've raised a couple of times with my dad and my brother, whether they made mistakes or not, to me, it was a mistake and I learned. I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to, do you know what I mean? I'm not going to do certain things because I learned from their ways. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think it, as I said, I think it depends on how close that mistake that person made how much if it's had an impact on you or influence on you, and how close that thing was to you. That's what I think the factors are.
Okay.
So not next chapter, but next part, he talks about being a business strategist. At the end of the day, the dope boy, as misguided and doomed as he is the ultimate entrepreneur at heart. They come out of the real school of hard knocks with 100% experience-based business education from the streets. The dope boy engages in every business function imaginable. They engage in illegal yet strategic and tactical plans of action for logistics, distribution networks, organization management, profit maximization, pricing elasticity, product development, quality assurance, creative marketing, branding, benchmarking, feasibility studies, and so much more. They're the most innately developed entrepreneurs and business strategists within a thriving industry. And I noted that down as being like an ode to transferable skills.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, no, seriously. And like, he then goes on to point out the process, which is find, grind, flip. And I definitely relate that to the business that I do with my business partner, in terms of finding the clients, grinding, getting them as a clients, flipping the profits and going again. And it's a cycle, using the same transferable skills that we used when we was on the roads. So on page 126, he talks about stunting and popping bottles, doing lifestyle. So he mentioned stunting the club, popping bottles, buying the bar out, and staying turned up is his main campaign to promote himself. The D-boy is a branding expert. Initially, and I've noted this down because I'm just reading it as we're going through it, I agree with that, but the pushback is depending who you're trying to sell to. So obviously, when you're trapping and you're in a club doing bottle, you're doing lifestyle and all that, that's you promoting yourself to other trappers to say, look, man's getting this bread. You wanna come and work with me, man, get it in over it. But then, even as I'm thinking and I'm saying it, it's like, all right, cool, but the fiends ain't in the clubs.
I was thinking the same thing.
But what's that?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, no, but the fiends ain't in the clubs unless you're trying to sell to the other D-boys, which when you get to a certain stage, that's what you're going to be doing anyway. So Swift George can relate to that. So when you got to, because remember he said he started off a bounce, then he got to a point where he was making $1 million pound deals. So obviously, when you're in a club, you're popping bottles doing table life. You're not doing it for the fiends, because you've got trap boys under you doing that. Now you're getting all the other trap boys that's either picking up your 9 bars or picking up boxes and picking up, do you know what I'm saying? When they see you doing that, they're like, oh shit, like he's getting bread. So that's now, the fiends are not your clients. Now the other trappers are now your clients. So as I read that, I'm like, all right, cool. It depends on what level. And he goes on to speak about it a bit further down in the book. Or your clients might just be in the club, if depends what you're doing. Yeah. So it goes hand in hand still.
Oh,
I
don't know what's more worrying, selling to fiends or selling to other D-boys. The way they talk about running up on the plug boy, Jesus Christ. But anyway,
it's all part of the business, man. It is what it is. But just before we move on to chapter 8, there was some success profiles that I wanted to bring light to, and it's in the book. It's on page 128, and it's a program, I believe, called Defy Ventures, and they only train ex-cons to become successful entrepreneurs. and they've got a list of alumni from the program. And if you go to page 128, then you can see who those other gentlemen are, other black businessmen that have been incarcerated, and they've come out to set up their own business. And I think it would be a really good page to look at, even if you don't read the whole book. At least get to see that there are other people that have been in this author's position and also have gone on to make multi-million-pound companies. So yeah, that's the last bit of chapter 7. If you guys want to add to it, then by all means do.
No, I've got nothing else to add to that.
All right, cool. Let's wrap it up for chapter 7 then, man.